you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first podcast. My name is Carlos, and for our very first episode, we decided to go right to the beginning,
Right to the
where
beginning.
where things started. And there's nobody better to tell us the story than our founder and CEO, James Dawson. How are you, boss?
I'm good, thanks. It's good to be here. It's kind of been something I've been thinking about for a very long time, like doing a podcast, and I've just always hesitated for a million reasons, thinking that we don't have the right cameras, we don't have the right mics, we don't have everything. But I think it's more about substance over form, and we've got some lovely stories to tell. So I'm excited to be speaking to you about this over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Well, we have to start somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
It just has to tell the story. Okay, so let's go straight into it.
Yep.
What gave you the wine bug? How did you get involved in wine?
Wine bug. So interesting story. I came to London in 1997,
Mm-hmm.
and after a very tough start, my first few nights I ended up sleeping in a park, and
That sounds very
clinging to my suitcase.
That sounds very tough.
But that's another story.
I hope it wasn't winter.
It was March. It was bracing. So I did some really rubbish jobs for 4 or 5 months, and then got a job with HSBC, the bank. They sent me to Paris after 6 months to go and set up a bond operation for them. And in Paris, I met some really great friends, and one of my friends in Paris, her father was a master chef, and he'd won the award for the Meilleur Ouvrier de France for charcuterie. So he was a master charcutier, and he could make charcuterie, foie gras, anything. And he was a real character, bald head, very jolly, huge curly moustache. And I would go to his place like at 11:30 on a Saturday morning. And he'd go, James, and he'd have a little pan, he'd be cooking something. And then every time he gave me a little bite of something to eat, he'd have a little glass of something.
Right.
So he just taught me about the whole wine and food pairing thing. And I kind of thought wine was okay before, and mostly just drank beer. But then it was like living in Paris and like discovering the wine culture there. Everyone was going out drinking wine with dinner and in wine bars and stuff. This is in like 98, 99. And then this guy in particular, his name was Jacques Henriot. And I'll never forget him because he just totally gave me the wine bug. And
Right.
I just got obsessed with the whole the flavors of the wine matching the food and stuff. And when I got that, that's when I really got the wine bug. Yeah, that's how it started.
Fantastic. Well, there's no better place to get the wine bug than the City of Lights and the capital of French wine, which is Paris.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic story. Why did you start Humble Grape?
Why did I start Humble Grape? Good question. So fast forward a bunch of years from that experience, I'd always been really fascinated with having my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an MBA in 2003, 2004. And once you've done an MBA at like a good London business school, then you kind of feel like you need to do something business-wise. I'd always worked in big corporates.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to start something of my own. And I was lying on a beach with my now wife, Haley. And it was in Dominican Republic. We had one of these really budget holidays, like £700 there and back plus lodging for a whole week. Like, you don't even want to know what the food was like. So one morning we were lying on the beach, mosquito, bites everywhere, very uncomfortable. A giant inflatable plastic turtle floating in the ocean, like literally like 50 meters off. Super classy resort, right?
Sounds very
Super
classy.
So we're lying there. The reason we're not by the pool is because at the pool, the drinking games are starting at like 10 o'clock in the morning, right? And
Right.
it was out of control. And we wanted some peace and quiet, so we went down the beach. And we're lying on the beach and having this like long chat, as you do when you've got time on your hands. So what do you want to do with your life, etc., etc. So Haley says to me, so what are you thinking business-wise? And I'm like, well, I love chess. I used to play chess professionally. Chess is cool. I could create some kind of a chess business, some online thing. I got a raised eyebrow. Right?
So that was a no finish start.
A raised eyebrow. That's boring. Like, okay.
We
So
might have to edit that one out.
we have to edit that one out. So she's like, well, what else do you like? And I'm, I like travel and stuff like that. I could set up like a travel company. And she's like, boring, boring, boring. Everyone's done that. And then, and then I'm like, well, I'm also really into wine.
Right.
Really into wine. And I need to set up a wine company. And I didn't know what I wanted to do quite then and there. I just had no idea, but I knew I needed to set up a wine company. And this is where serendipity hits at the same time. Is I met this Czechoslovakian guy on holiday there with his wife, and he happened to be an importer into London. And he imported wine into London, and I got chatting with him. We became friends, and he was the first guy I bought wine from when I got back to London. And this guy, his name is Paul Kurz, and I'm still friends with his son and stuff. He's still around. He lives out in Buckinghamshire, in one of these ancient houses. And he was a real character. Him and his wife pitched up in London, must have been in the 70s, and they had no money. They were dirt poor, but they decided, like, they'd been working hard in London in restaurants and all sorts of stuff. They wanted to go on holiday, and they rented this old VW Beetle and drove to Europe, and the thing broke down in Bordeaux, and they were so poor they couldn't afford to fix it. So they started doing odd jobs for all the people in Bordeaux and the vineyard, and they got to know all these vineyards. Right?
Right.
And he knew nothing about wine, got to know all these vineyards, and then made friends with them, and then started buying Bordeaux and bringing it back to the UK, and that's how he started his business in the 70s. So this guy is the guy that kind of helped me get started, along with a few other people that I'm going to mention it later. But the interesting thing is almost everyone that I met and told them I wanted to set up a wine business is, no, you shouldn't do it. It's too hard.
It is not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
So, and I'm like, I don't know if I've got like this pathological demand avoidance or something, or irrational exuberance, or I massively underestimate how difficult something is going to be. But I just had to do it anyway. So that's kind of how, I got the idea to set up the wine business. But it's completely different now from what I first imagined it would be.
Wow. Okay. And let's look at the name. Why Humble Grape?
Oh yeah, that's another funny story. So this must have been around 2007, 2008. I'm living in Clapham Junction in like a really classy ex-local council flat, because that's all I could afford at the time, with green carpets and moldy brown walls.
Funny smelling bedrooms.
Funny smelling bedrooms.
I think we've all been there.
That's how you started in London, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but on the other side of Clapham Junction, there was a beautiful Oddbins.
Mm-hmm.
Oddbins back in the day was really cool. It was like big shelves of wine, all dusty and cool, and they had these proper wine geeks there who you could chat to about wine and stuff. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but there was a slightly older couple who lived in Clapham. They were doing quite well, and I'd been invited to a dinner party, and I was told to bring a bottle of wine.
Oh wow, that is a
pressure.
dreading moment for a lot of people. What to choose? Exactly.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to Oddbins, and I'm gonna splash 30 quid or 25 quid, which is a huge amount of money for me.
Back in the day,
it needs to be an amazing bottle of wine. So I roll in there, and the guy comes up to me, and I'm browsing around, and I'm supposed to get a white. So he asked me what I like, and I'm like, well, I'm looking for a white for this dinner party. And he says, what kind of whites do you like? What don't you like? I said, well, I don't like those, those big oaky buttery Chardonnays, those flabby Chardonnays. I don't like that kind of stuff. And he says, do you like Chardonnay? I'm like, I don't really like Chardonnay. And he says, well, what do you like? So he asked me a bunch of other stuff. I think I knew two other whites. I knew Sauvignon Blanc and maybe Pinot Grigio. And then he said to me, oh, do you like Chablis? And I said, oh yeah, I love Chablis. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite wines. And then he started laughing at me because Chablis is a Chardonnay. And he was literally sniggering and laughing and looking at his mate in the back. And I felt so humiliated. In that moment, it was such a horrible experience that I just left the shop and I didn't buy anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking down the road thinking about it, and that memory stayed with me for so long that when it came a few years later to coming up with the name for the wine business, I wanted to be the opposite of that. I wanted something that was kind of, more natural, more accessible, something that people could connect with,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't like making people fearful to engage with wine. And that's why I decided to call it Humble Grape, like the opposite of that experience, So and that's how the name came about. And yeah, it's my one moment of genius in my life, I think. Everything else has been a mess.
Not sure I agree with that. What a wonderful story, and it does highlight the culture that back then existed in the wine industry,
Yeah.
of being a closed club.
Yep.
If you know you in it. If you don't, then you feel scared or afraid of asking
Absolutely.
questions,
Yeah.
and it still happens a lot. It still happens. So here's the first piece of advice that I would like to ask from you to our listeners.
Yeah.
For those who find themselves in the same situation, like walking into a wine shop, one of our venues, or even at a restaurant, when you get those big wine lists that look like a
The
Bible,
leather Bible.
they don't know even how to start. What advice do you have for customers who find themselves in that position?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult one. So first, I'm going to tell you a funny story about the leather Bible, because when my wife and I, Haley, started dating, I was obviously getting really into wine. And then one night, it was a Thursday or a Friday night, we were going to go to some restaurant, some fancy French restaurant in the city. I think it was Coq d'Argent.
Mhm.
And I emailed her or texted her, very excited, and she sent me back this two-liner. You've got all day at work to browse the wine list of Coq d'Argent. And so when I get to the restaurant tonight, we can have a conversation, and I don't have to look at the back of a
Of the wine list.
of a big wine Bible for the first 30 minutes of our dinner. I'm like, okay, I didn't realize I'd be doing that. So I guess the thing is back in the day, like even now still in some restaurants, it is quite awkward if you don't know about wine.
Yes.
And I think the problem that we in the trade, restaurants, wine bars, and stuff need to solve is we need to make sure that it's our job to get the customer a wine they love.
Yes.
Because if people aren't comfortable with ordering wine, the worst thing that could possibly happen to them is they look at a list that's got a name and a price. They don't really understand it. They usually end up, if they're feeling unsure, they'll probably order on price, or maybe they'll go for a grape or a name they vaguely recognize.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing we're trying to solve for is to not let them get a wine that they don't like.
Yes.
And this has happened to me all the time when I was learning about wine and really getting into it in restaurants. Is I would be feeling a bit anxious and awkward in a restaurant, and I would ask for some advice, and I would get like, oh, it's a fabulous vintage, it's like an amazing chateau, they've been doing X, Y, and Z, it belongs to this family. Okay, and then you order the wine and it gets to the table and it's very expensive, you don't like it. Yes. But then the sommeliers, obviously he loves it and he knows a lot more about wine, so there must be something wrong with me if I don't like the wine.
Yeah.
So then you just sit there and drink it.
Forcing it down and then washing the wine with the food because
Exactly.
you're not enjoying it. Yeah, it is something that also annoys me when I go to wine shops or wine restaurants and the sommeliers try to sell or push their palate
Yes.
onto us. It doesn't work because the best wine in the world is the one that you enjoy drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
So wine should be on customers' terms.
Yeah.
Right. Not on our terms. Yeah. On their terms.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Carlos, back on you then. How did you get into wine?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So,
or how did you end up in London, or like all of the above?
No, we flip the interview around. So, I came to London in 2004.
Yep.
Brazil is a beer drinking country.
Yeah.
So I always saw wine around, but never really tried it. Coming into London, ended up in hospitality because my English was too basic for me to do anything else.
Yeah.
And I remember I was the waiter who stood at the pass.
Yep.
Behind the two dumb lifts,
Yeah.
getting food out, putting the sauces together, teaspoons and sanding, all the kind of thing that you see on the fine dining
You could read a
restaurant.
table number.
Yeah, I could read the table number, exactly. And I was at the briefing, and the sommelier came in, and I wasn't part of the tasting itself because I wasn't the floor team, and they were trying this red wine. It was a Gervais Chambertin.
Okay.
And they all went around describing what they were smelling with these complicated words that I couldn't understand.
Forest floor mushrooms.
Exactly.
Inch of leather.
Yeah, dried violets, and all that kind of stuff. And then I was looking at that, and I sniggered because I found it so pretentious.
Funny.
Yeah. And the sommelier saw it.
Okay.
He saw me sniggering. At the end of the briefing, he signaled to me and said, "I want to speak to you." And I was like, "Oh shit."
Here we go.
Here we go. We're gonna get one on the head now.
Yeah.
Quite the contrary, he came over with a sampling glass and the wine, and said, "Try this."
Mm-hmm.
And I tried it, and it hit me like a train. It tastes so much better than the student plonk that I was used to drink and that I could afford at that time. That piqued my interest.
And was that the Gervais Chambertin?
Well, Gervais Chambertin.
Okay. Right.
If I'm not wrong, it was 1998.
Wow.
But this was in 2004.
Yeah.
So that piqued my interest. How can this taste so much better than what I'm used to drink? What is the difference? What makes it so special?
Amazing.
Yeah, and that curiosity is still driving me. What makes it special? It's being in wine is a journey.
Yeah,
right.
Totally. Yeah,
it's a journey.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of the journey, in all of these years of Humble Grape, how did you find the producers that we work with?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question. So I don't know if I'm lazy or I just look for efficiency. I always try and find a weird way that's like very unique to do something very quickly that other people would end up doing a huge ton of research on. Right, so I figured out really early on that winemakers know amazing wines. They've got amazing palates, right?
Yes.
They've got amazing palates. They make wine. A lot of them are consultants. And so I'll give you an example. I went to the Loire Valley, must have been 2010 or 2011. It must have been 2011. I went to the Loire Valley and stayed there for 2 weeks. And I was going to go and discover a whole bunch of Loire Valley wines. So instead of like going and visiting every single vineyard there, I found the benchmark red Chinon that I loved, that I bought from Berry Brothers, for example. It's called Domaine de Chevalerie. Super, super interesting wine. And then there was a couple of others. I can't quite remember which vineyards they were. But I went for a tasting there and hung around and had a long chat with the guy who was running the tasting. I asked him if the winemaker was around. The winemaker was. He came over, chatted to him for 10, 15 minutes. And I said to him, look, we can't, I'm just a tiny little brand. Yeah, we've just started out. I can't afford to import your stuff. And also I can't import it because Berry Brothers has exclusivity. But you must know some young guns around here that are making cool stuff and doing interesting wines that are not, readily available in France or even are not exporting yet.
Right.
And they gave me 3 or 4 names, and those wines ended up being exceptional, right? And then it's the same for my discovery into South Africa. I went wine tasting in South Africa must have been 2001, 2002. And with my very close friend Ewan and his wife Viv, and we spent like 2 weeks in Franschhoek Stellenbosch, and we loved it. It was amazing. But I found the wines back in 2001, 2002, the South African wines, I found them big and oaky and a bit clumsy, and didn't enjoy them that much. And I just thought, oh well, these guys they just trying too hard. It's like, and then I wrote off South African wines completely for like 6 or 7 years. And then I met a guy called Johan Reinecker, who is one of the founders of like biodynamic wine movement in South Africa. I met him in London somewhere, I can't even remember. And I tried his wine, and it was called the Reinecker Reserve Red. And then he also made a Semillon Sauvignon blend, like a Bordeaux style white, which is a bit spicy, a bit interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I just absolutely fell in love with these wines. But again, I couldn't bring them in because he already had a big contract with a company. And then I had a chat to him, and he said, "Hey, you've got to speak to these guys in London, Bartony. They've just started out. They're quite new and fresh. This guy, Francois Hasbrook at Blackwater. There's this other guy, Anton, who's making Rainbow's End, right?
Rainbow's End.
So those three, right? That was a 10-minute conversation.
That's how it started.
That's how it all started. So, look, I do discover some wines by traveling around and meeting winemakers and vineyards. I do discover wines by going to Pro Wine, which is the biggest wine fair in the world in Germany. You imagine 18 football pitches, right, of just guys showcasing wine. And that's where we met these guys. I met this guy, Thomas from Vineyards in Germany at this wine fair. And they'd literally like scraped up the last few pennies they had and like flew from Argentina to Germany. And if they didn't land Humble Grape as a contract, they would have been in trouble financially, right?
Because they are very small, aren't they?
Very small. These guys, I think they make like 80,000 bottles a year or something. It's tiny. Yeah. To put that into context, someone like Veuve Clicquot, the champagne brand, make 11 million bottles a year, right?
Yes.
So we were talking about how to discover wines. I think the most important thing for us as a wine business, and you've been on this journey with me for a while now, Carlos, and Carlos has taken over the wine buying from me and selecting the vineyards that we work with, and our principles are pretty simple. The first principle is we only work with people who are decent human beings that we like, good people, right?
Yes.
Because you want to work with, if you're going to do business with someone, like importing their wine, it's going to be a relationship that's going to be 10, 20, 30, 50 years.
You have to connect with them, right? There needs to be a connection.
Yeah. So that's our first principle. The second principle is the wine has to be exceptionally good quality to price ratio. Mm-hmm. So if I'm paying 30 or 40 pounds for a bottle of wine at Humble Grape, that wine needs to be at least 1.5 to 2x better quality than a 30, 40 pound bottle of wine anywhere around Humble Grape. So we're not cheaper than anyone else, but our quality and our value is easily double what you can get anywhere else. So our criteria is like, it's got to be decent human beings, good people, super high quality to price ratio. It's got to be biodynamic or organic or sustainable. We really care about the environment. We care about the planet. It comes at a cost, but there's no other way to live. We've been doing this since 2009. We've only imported wines like that. And now everyone else is jumping on the bandwagon, but we've just always done it that way.
It's been the core of our business since the beginning. It's not that we're jumping onto a fad or using buzzwords. It's been there at the core of Humble Grape since the very beginning.
Since the very beginning.
It's been a journey in Humble Grape. We just celebrated about 15 years.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Not long ago.
How 15 years, overnight success, right?
Absolutely. How did it feel like to celebrate 15 years of Humble Grape?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I did a little talk for a group of young people who work in Canary Wharf last night at Humble Grape Canary Wharf. Mm-hmm. It's called Wharf Connect. There's this app where they connect young people and they get them to experience life in Canary Wharf, and it's networking for them and learning about business. And every month or two they have a CEO who tells a hopefully interesting story to these guys and doesn't bore them to tears. And one of the things that came to mind when they asked me that question is, I still sometimes, when I walk into Humble Grape St. Bride's or Battersea last night or Canary Wharf, I have this imposter syndrome where like there's a part of me that says like, wow, this can't be yours. It feels like a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. And so celebrating our 15th birthday, which was in September, and having a whole bunch of regular customers, the team that's been with us for so long, mm-hmm. And then a bunch of investors and stuff, and like standing on a box of wine that I was about to fall off next to you.
It's Humble Grape, right?
Because we don't have any fancy props here. Right? That felt really emotional for me. Mm-hmm. It was a really emotional experience, and it was only second to probably the most emotional experience I've ever had at Humble Grape, which was when we opened our Battersea wine bar.
Right.
So, just to give the listeners a little bit of context here, we opened Battersea in 2015 after doing crowdfunding on Cedars, fighting tooth and nail to find a site, building the site by hand. You know, the wooden planks on the ground floor are scaffold planks that I put there myself, like wooden walls and stuff. We rescued some planks from a house in Acton. The bar is rescued from a burnt down bar in Liverpool Street. So it's like we built it on a shoestring. Um, but when we started Humble Grape in 2009, we started importing our wines in 2011, and then we only opened, excuse me, Battersea in 2015.
Right.
So we had all these wines that we started collecting from 2011 to 2015, and the wines were always in the warehouse. So, and you would see them every now and then. If I was doing like a French tasting, then we would have like 6 or 7 French wines, and we'd have them delivered to a venue. But then when we built Battersea, and we couldn't afford wine racks, so we got these old apple crates, stuck them on the walls, and they actually ended up looking quite cool. And I remember because I've always had a full-time day job at doing Humble Grape, and I remember, I think it was Desiree at the time. She was responsible for stacking those shelves, and I was at work all day, and the builders had finished the wine crates the night before. And I mean, we will show some pictures in future episodes about these wine crates, these apple crates with wine in them. And I remember getting to Battersea at like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock that evening, or maybe even slightly earlier. I might have skived off work, and I got there and I walked up the stairs and I saw all these shelves with all the Humble Grape wines that we'd had for years, all in one place. And like I just felt like the whole site just came to life, and it was like
Wow.
all my dreams that I've had since I started falling in love with wine, about this beautiful little, Spanish or Italian enoteca with little bottles of wine everywhere and stuff. It all just manifested into Battersea. And when I saw that, it was like a massive emotional moment for me, to see that kind of stuff.
Wow. Wow. It gives me goosebumps to hear this story.
Yeah.
It's been a journey for you. So it sounds like that was one of the highlights of the
Yep.
journey for you.
Yep.
One of the very positive moments. But the journey also has challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was there a moment that was particularly challenging for you that made you think, did I make the right decision
Yep.
to get into wine business?
That's a good question. There've been a number of times in my life in multiple businesses where it's so dark that I thought I couldn't carry on anymore.
Yeah.
Like you just like, and then sometimes it lasts a few hours, sometimes it lasts a few days, but it's like it's really, and maybe I'm too stubborn to give up, or like I can't think of what else to do, but I managed to carry on somehow. I think it must have been just before we did the fundraise in like 2013. It was just really hard, to kind of build this business. I was working full time as a tech CEO. I had one account that was reasonably big, but I was working full time all day. And I remember I was in a restaurant with a bunch of other tech CEOs, and we were busy working on something because I was at OpenFin at the time. And I remember like just suddenly, like at the back of my mind, like worrying that this delivery for this big customer that goes out every Tuesday or every Wednesday morning, I think it was. I wonder if it's actually been sent, because if it doesn't get sent, they'll cancel the contract, and the wine needs to get sent before midday, and it was like 11:30, and I just remember like having this huge panic, and I had to excuse myself and sneak into the bathroom with my laptop and log on to London City Bond and check to see if the delivery had been done, the email they'd sent the night before, and the person at the time that I'd hired, I'm not going to mention the name, MBA, young, hungry, like really, who was kind of working for me, had gone on a massive bender and was unavailable, like wasn't available to take any calls.
Wow.
And hadn't seen the delivery or done the delivery, and I was literally 10 minutes away from losing the account. So I had to log into London City Bond and do the delivery myself, and luckily it went out. And then obviously I had to fire her, and then uh, I realized that like this is so hard, and I'm the only person in the business because that was just the two of us, right? I had people coming and going, and I just it was a really tough moment,
Yeah.
and I kind of like I almost felt like giving up.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2 years before that, I remember at the end of some months, I would like struggle. I had one person working in my operations, and at the end of some months, I would be struggling to reach payroll. So you'd hit like the 25th or the 26th of the month, and I'd realize like, oh, I've got to pay Cameron, his salary, and I've got no money in the bank. And I like literally had to just block out 2 or 3 hours in my calendar for the last 3 days of the month and get on the phone and phone all the private clients and friends and family I knew, and just beg them to buy wine so that we could get some cash in the business to pay the salary.
Pay the salary.
And
Wow.
sometimes that didn't work. And then I had to borrow money on my credit card to pay salaries. And, I'm sure like a lot of entrepreneurs have been there, but that's hard. But I think the darkest moment was COVID, when we had to close all the wine bars, and just seeing like that, the emotion on people's faces, and like how like numb they were, and how like unbelievable the whole situation was.
Yes.
That was
I was in the
super
room
dark.
for that meeting.
Yeah.
I remember.
So that was dark, and like like the only way I got through that was because people like you and Kevin and Eddie and Dan, and like the heart of Humble Grape, everyone was around, and we got through it together somehow.
Yes.
But I think we'll save that for another episode, because I don't want
That is a very long story.
reduce me to tears.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, among the listeners, there will be seasoned leaders, there will be entrepreneurs, there will be young leaders, people trying to get into business now. As a bit of advice for them, what keeps you going when you find situations difficult like this? What is your north star in situations like this?
So that's a good question. So I think, like, as a business owner, you just have to be comfortable with the fact that things are always going to go horribly wrong. And if you get emotional about that, then like your emotions are going to get in the way of you being able to solve the problem at hand. So you have to just be calm and deal with it, especially when things go very wrong. You have to be calm and deal with it, and not get too excited when things are going well, and not get too disheartened when things go badly, because things go badly all the time. And there's like tons of examples I can give about how we had huge financial problems and losses for all sorts of reasons, and you just have to, just carry on
and focus on what you can control, because there's so much that's out of our control that we can't
Yeah.
influence. How about for those who are thinking about getting into the wine business, investing in a wine business or starting a wine business? What would be your piece of advice for them?
Yeah, so this is something that I see a lot of people do. Everyone wants to write a book. Very few people end up writing a book. Everyone wants to own a business. Very few people actually end up doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main thing that holds people back is that they don't start. When something needs to get done, you just need to start it. As soon as you start doing something and moving in the direction, even if you start in the wrong way, then the universe conspires to teach you how to do the next step. If you're sitting at home thinking about stuff, pontificating, drawing Excel spreadsheets, creating cool company names, thinking about how you're going to do your accounting and how you're going to manage your logistics, or all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking 5 years in advance, like that's not super helpful. You have to figure out how to start immediately. And the best way to start is to find a customer that's prepared to pay you to do something. Find any customer, or even do something for them for free, that they can get value. Start with that, and as soon as you do that, then it'll teach you how to do the business.
Yeah, the first step, breaking the inertia, is what trips up a lot of entrepreneurs. Want to be entrepreneurs, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, now going back to wine. So you've
Back to wine.
Back to wine.
This guy, right?
Vinny's Coach. That label, for the listeners who can't see it, that label is absolutely phenomenal. It's a big metallic label, and it embodies Thomas' journey into wine, but that is for a different episode.
Yep.
So going back into wine, you've been in wine for so long. What style of wine, or what wine do you think people should drink more of?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think you answered this question in the beginning of the show when
Mhm.
you said people should drink more of the wines they love. That's all.
There
But
you go.
then also, I think we get stuck in a wine rut.
Mhm.
So you're stuck in a wine rut and you only drink Sauvignon Blanc or you only drink Chablis, and your go-to with a steak is a Californian Cab or something like that. Next time you're in a wine bar or in an environment where you've got some kind of cool, interesting wine people that you can have a conversation with, tell them, hey, I'm always drinking Sancerre or I'm always drinking Californian Cabs. I always have a Californian Cab with my tomahawk steak. Can you recommend me something that's not a Californian Cab but similar in style that I can kind of broaden my horizons a bit? Because that's a nice way of like dipping around the edges instead of going completely off piste. And now we're not doing a Cali Cab with our steak. We're doing a Beaujolais Nouveau, which is like, it's very different, right? And then that might be a bit of a shock.
On
And
the other extreme.
you might not enjoy your evening, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you touch on something very important there. When I'm guiding tastes, I normally tell customers, we sometimes can see that people feel scared of asking questions,
Yep.
mostly because they don't want to show how little they know.
Yep.
But little they know that we wine lovers could talk about wine until the cows come home.
Yes, that's right.
So once for those who are listening, engage to us, ask questions, because that's what we do. We will
Yeah.
stand then and help you find the perfect bottle of wine for you at that moment.
Yeah.
So you touch on an important point there. Still we're talking about wine. So what are you drinking right now?
What am I drinking right
Because
now?
our tastes change through
Yeah.
time. So what are you drinking right now?
So I lost my sense of taste and smell during COVID for 6 months, and I'm not sure it came completely back, or my
Wow.
taste changed with age. But I do find that I'm enjoying like richer, bolder wines a lot more, and spicier kind of whites, like more Rhone Valley kind of style whites, Marsanne, Roussanne, kind of like those blends, or like even something that has a bit of malolactic fermentation.
Mhm.
Something like that. And with the reds, it depends. Like I always do kind of match it with food. Last night, I was out for dinner with Thomas at Humble Grape Battersea.
Mhm.
We had a tomahawk steak. I mean, the bone was literally like, it was bigger than my arm, my forearm. And there was a chunk of meat off the side. And I wanted him to experience a wine that he hadn't had for a while, because obviously he's in Argentina. He drinks a lot of Argentinian wines, and it would have been pointless us drinking one of his wines. So I said, look, what do you want to try? Burgundy, Bordeaux, like something from South Africa, or anything. And he's like, maybe like Rhone Valley. So I went and got himself, instead of a northern Rhone, I got him a southern Rhone, Chateau Gigognon, Chateauneuf du Pape, Clos de Roi, and we opened it, and he absolutely loved it, and so did I. And big shout out to the guys at Chateau Gigognon doing an amazing job. We love that, and we had that last night. So it's always, for me, I always used to try and match food and wine, but when I'm going out for dinner, I like to choose the wine first and then like add the food afterwards. But when I'm at home, if it's pizza night, I'm gonna have like a nice like Italian red, or something like that, or maybe even like one of those big Italian reds from Macedonia.
Mhm.
Kind of style.
Something quite bright, fresh, with structure, enjoyable, fruit forward.
Yeah, and if it's like roast chicken, then I'll always go for like a Cab Franc or a Pinot Noir or something like, or sometimes just like a big oaky white.
Mhm.
So I'm always just like experimenting, and I've had the absolute luxury of since I started Humble Grape in 2011 to drink tons and tons and tons of really, really cool wines. But I don't like go for expensive stuff. I like stuff that's cool, that I enjoy. There's the wine, the Insolia.
Yes, from Sicily.
Yeah, the wine from Sicily.
Vini Consiglio.
I absolutely love that. And that's, how much is that a bottle?
It's 25 quid.
25 quid a bottle. It's spicy. It's fresh. It's
zesty. Has that mineral note to it.
Yeah, absolutely love that wine. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Make sure we don't run out.
Okay, note taken. Now, an interesting one here. Desert island wine. What would you take with you?
Jesus, I actually got asked this question last night.
Oh, did you?
So firstly, I would rather lose a finger than only be able to drink one wine for the rest of my life, or maybe if it had. And secondly, I think if you had to choose one, it would have to be something very complex that something interesting, like
That would keep you
really
entertained.
interesting, that would keep you entertained. Like some wines you can sit on your own and drink like 2 or 3 glasses and just think. Those kinds of wines are like, they're quite rare. It would probably be a red Burgundy.
Red Burgundy.
Maybe a Volnay or a Vendrominay, something like that from a very good vintage. Yeah.
Well, Burgundy, king of Pinot wine, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
King of Pinot wine in the world.
Although the guys in Oregon are doing quite a good job as well. Right?
They are, and Russian River Valley.
Yeah. Yeah, the Dutton Goldfield Pinot Noir is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of the 3 Pinot Noirs are absolutely phenomenal. Very different one from the other.
Yeah.
They always surprise me when I try them.
So I'm going to throw it back on you then. What would your desert island be like?
Oh.
That's Gevrey Chambertin.
I wouldn't say no to that. I am a big Riesling lover. So you would be Riesling. You would be a more complex Riesling. Something made German, something made in traditional German winemaking.
A GG.
GG.
Yeah.
Barrel fermented in very, very old barrels with a lovely minerality, with the texture. Yeah,
what kind of age would it have? Do you like old wines or younger ones?
For Rieslings, I prefer wines with some aging on the back.
Yeah.
Because they start showing that beautiful note of petrol.
Yeah.
That adds, for me, that adds a nice layer of complexity to the Riesling. So for me, it would be a GG Riesling with some aging on the back.
Yep, von Winning, perhaps.
Von Winning, yes, von Winning.
Kirchenstück or
Ungeheuer.
Ungeheuer, yes.
Ungeheuer. That Ungeheuer Riesling is absolutely delicious.
Fantastic.
And lastly, what does the future look like for Humble Grape?
That's a good question. So, like coming out of COVID, like we've just been hit by shock after shock after shock. 2 of our biggest competitors went under in the last sort of 6 to 9 months. Vagabond and Vinotech are great businesses with like strong founders. Maybe I don't know what happened there. Maybe they expanded too quickly, or what happened, or maybe they had too much debt. We built our business on equity, so we didn't have that big debt burden when COVID hit. And yeah, it's never cool to see that happen to anyone. And I hope those guys do well and go on to do other cool stuff. I'm sure they will. They're very smart people. But the thing for us at the moment is to get we talk about sustainability in wines, and we talk about organic, biodynamic, and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that's become extremely important for me is business sustainability, making sure that Humble Grape has a strong foundation, and that we can look after our teams and our people, and we can all grow as a business, and we can keep looking after our customers and bringing these amazing wines from all over the world, and supporting these tiny little vineyards that would never be able to afford to get to England or anywhere on their own without us. So it's such a virtuous circle. Our customers are trusting us to recommend these beautiful little unknown wines from all over the world. They're buying the wines, which enables us to buy the wines from these vineyards in 26 different countries we import from, and bring them over and keep these guys alive. So for me, the future is all about sustainability. I want to get better at looking after my customers. I want to get better at looking after my team, and I want to get better at looking after the business, and we want to have more fun, right?
Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons we're here.
Yes, it is. That is true. Well, James, thank you very much for taking the time, for telling us your story, the Humble Grape story. For the listeners, we'll put on the show notes all the wines that we mentioned during our chat. And we also have a promotional code. If you go on our website, toward any wines, you can use the code HGPodcast10. We'll put that on our show notes as well to get 10% discount on your next wine order. James, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Carlos. It was really nice talking to you.
Guys, thank you very much for listening to the podcast, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.